Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever looked at a simple local tradition, a folk song, or an old legend and thought to yourself, okay, there has to be more to this, then you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a journey high into the Gardwal Himalayas of Uttarakhand. We're going to track how a simple mountain flower evolves from a tragic myth into a vibrant children's festival and ultimately into this profound, unbreakable symbol of systemic resistance for the women of the region. So let's dive right into this core question, because it's going to challenge literally everything you thought you knew about Himalayan folklore. We often write off myths as just, pretty stories from the past. But up in the Himalayas, these stories are living, breathing survival tools. Picture this. Our story kicks off with the legend of Fyonli. According to the folklore of the Kumaon region, Fyonli was this stunningly beautiful, deeply loved daughter from the remote village of Sorikot. Well, one day, while she was out collecting water by a stream, she crossed paths with a handsome prince named Bupi Rawat. He was just sitting up in a tree, making a flower garland. He played his flute, they locked eyes, and boom, an instant forbidden romance blossomed. Now, as you might guess, this romance absolutely infuriated her father, Nago Surial. When Fyonli came home late, wearing the flowers the prince had given her, her dad strictly warned her to never, ever see the young man again. But Fyonli totally defied the strict patriarchal expectations of her time. She basically declared she would rather take her own life than be separated from him. And sadly, that defiance led to a truly tragic climax. Blinded by rage, her father pushed her, and Fyonli fell to the ground, dead. But the legend tells us that the gods, watching this heartbreak from above, were filled with remorse. They promised she would never be forgotten, so they transformed her spirit into the delicate yellow Fyonli flower, decreeing she be worshipped every single spring. Out of pure tragedy, a lasting symbol of resilience was born. That brings us to part one, the Full Day Festival, and celebrating the arrival of spring. Because here's the thing, the story of Fyunli isn't just an old myth gathering dust. It's actively lived out every single year through a celebration led entirely by kids. It's modest, but incredibly deliberate. Right at dawn, children, known as Fuliaries, gather fresh Fyonli and vibrant red barrage flowers. They carry them in little bamboo baskets, place them on the doorsteps of their neighbors, and finally pool all their offerings together to worship Guogamata, the protective goddess of flowers. And as these kids scatter the yellow and red flowers on the thresholds, they sing this beautiful, specific blessing. In return for wishing full granaries and blessed doorways upon the house, families hand out rice, jaggery, and sometimes small coins to the children. It's just a wonderfully peaceful display of community bonding and seasonal awareness. I mean, it feels entirely innocent, doesn't it? But that shifts us into part two, hidden transcripts, and the macro reality of Himalayan life. Because right behind those bright yellow flowers and sweet songs lies a much harsher landscape. We're talking about a reality defined by intense ecological threats and deeply entrenched patriarchal control. There's a fascinating academic paper from the International Journal of Language, Literature, and Culture that fundamentally reframes these traditions. The researchers argue that Garhwali women are actually using these folk songs as embodied, strategic forms of protest against their marginalization. They use this brilliant sociological concept called hidden transcripts, coined by James C. Scott. Think about it. When you don't have the political power or safety to openly protest, what do? You encode your dissent into culturally accepted formats, like a folk song. When you pair that with feminist theorist Bell Hook's concept of talking back, it suddenly clicks. These everyday melodies are actually safe, communal spaces for women to assert their agency and critique the authority above them. And to really get this, we have to understand the sheer weight of the systemic challenges these women face. With men frequently migrating to cities for work, the women are left behind to shoulder a massive double burden. They're managing households, raising kids, and doing grueling agricultural labor, all in a highly fragile environment threatened by deforestation and soil erosion and governed by very strict patriarchal norms. So, the crucial takeaway here is this. When Garhwali women sing a traditional song about a girl named Vimla slipping with her grass-cutting sickle, it's not just some literal story about farming. It's a subversive critique. It highlights the total invisibility of women's heavy labor, it mourns the pain of fractured families from migration, and it calls for education and empowerment. The song itself literally is the protest. Moving into part three, Guardians of the Himalayas, from song to action. Because this tradition of using song to safely express discontent, it didn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, it evolved into active physical resistance on a massive scale. This chant we're looking at brings us to one of the most famous environmental movements in modern history, the Chipko movement of the 1970s. When commercial loggers started devastating the forests they relied on, women mobilized. They used this exact chant to rally entire communities. And notice how brilliantly they used their culture as a shield. They took the Rakhi, which is a traditional sacred thread tied by sisters to protect their brothers, and they tied them directly to the trees. Incredible figures like Gaura Devi led the charge, effectively daring the loggers to strike the women first. They explicitly linked environmental preservation with their deepest cultural and religious identity, making those trees absolutely untouchable. We see this exact same grassroots activism flare up again in the 1990s during the anti-liquor protests. Women like Tin Charimai led movements using songs that warned alcohol would cause their homes, their fields, and even their tallies, their dinner plates, to be sold off. Through the sheer power of music and collective action, they successfully forced local liquor bans. It's just amazing. Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, From Silence to Strength, and the Legacy of the Silenced. Ultimately, what this explainer really highlights is a profound shift in perspective. The women of Uttarakhand are far, far more than passive figures in a tough landscape. They are fierce nature keepers and unyielding moral anchors. By turning their private pain into a collective cultural memory, they took a tragic myth, a fragile yellow flower, and the everyday act of singing, and transformed the whole thing into an unbreakable system of resilience. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought to chew on. We've just seen how a song is never really just a song, and a flower is never just a flower. So I encourage you to look closely at the traditions, the local jokes, and the cultural rhythms around your own life. Ask yourself, what deeper struggles might they be quietly fighting right in front of you? Thanks so much for learning with me today.